This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Henry Rossoff filling in for Dan Mannarino. Well, never a dull moment just talking about politics in New York, both the city and the state. President Trump's administration just clawed back more than $100 million in migrant money. That's a grand total of $188 million that the president's new administration has clawed back. It's likely to blow a hole in the city budget. There's questions about if the state will backfill some of that money. There's been some hesitation to do that this time around with the migrant crisis beginning to wind down. By the way, that state budget is late with sticking points around policy, not so much funding, specifically with criminal justice reform and how to deal with the issue of homelessness and mental illness in the subway system. So let's get into all of that with Assembly Member Emily Gallagher, a Democrat who represents Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and Fort Greene. Emily, Assembly Member, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with something that's really firmly within your wheelhouse and responsibility. The state budget is late. What do you guys view as the sticking points at this point? When might we expect a budget?
Well, the sticking point is that despite in the Assembly us choosing to never put policy in the budget, we see the governor time and again loading up the budget with unpopular ideas that then we have to negotiate to be able to fund the state. So, right now we are trying to talk her down from some of the policies that she's put in there. Like I think the biggest issue is around the laws that we created to make our trial system more fair.
You're talking about discovery reform, right? Yes.
Right, discovery reform. And we call it Khalif's Law because it was really shaped around the death of Khalif Browder, who, was wrongfully incarcerated in Rikers Island. And the trauma of that ended up with him committing suicide. And that is something that we never want to happen again. So we're fighting hard to keep that discovery there flowing. And, we're hearing time and again that she doesn't want to cave on this. So that's where the sticking point is. It's got nothing to do with our fiscal reality.
So let me make devil's advocate argument here, just because I've been at press conferences with the governor and with DAs pushing for some changes to this discovery reform. Essentially what they say is because of some tight deadlines, police are not necessarily able to get all of the information so quickly to prosecutors. Prosecutors then in turn have to dismiss cases outright because they can't pass that information on to the defense, and it's leading to a lot of recidivism. Those same people who have their cases dismissed over and over again are doing crimes, especially along the lines of theft or simple assault. Why is giving a little more leeway to the cops and prosecutors here problematic in your view?
If you have the evidence to get someone, charged with a crime, that person will be charged with a crime. The problem is that the defense needs to be able to create their plan to defend that person. That's one of our civil rights, that everyone gets the opportunity to be presumed innocent. And a lot of times we're dealing with major resource issues, and the DA and the police work together to create that pile of evidence. One of the issues is that without a deadline, the police and the DAs were just not giving people the evidence at all, which made it difficult for people to actually have their innocence protected. What we're going to see here is not anything but more wrongful convictions if we get rid of discovery reform. And we have one of the highest numbers of wrongful convictions in the country. So it's really important that we protect our discovery laws as much as possible.
Let's move on to another portion of the state budget that is at the intersection of some news of the day, with the Trump administration saying it's clawing back more money. The city's now at a pretty significant deficit of about $188 million of federal migrant money they thought they were getting. The mayor has asked for about $1 billion from the state budget to help with paying for the migrant crisis. Will the city see some of that billion, maybe just the $188 million? What's the talk in Albany?
Well, the talk is that this is who folks elected. We have congressional representatives in this state who are Republicans, and the Republicans need to be fighting for this state and fighting for our resources. They won the White House, and they need to be fighting for our state in the White House. And if they can't fight for our state in the White House, then we can elect someone else that will. But additionally,
go ahead.
I do think that we have lots of opportunity in New York because we are actually a donor state. We create more wealth than the federal government gives us. So there are some things that we might want to look at around that. If they want to keep our money and not give it back to us for the things we need, then maybe we should not be doing that. And maybe we should also be taxing the ultra wealthy who like to make homes and businesses here in New York.
So what you're saying is you believe the state legislature will consider withholding tax dollars from the federal government in response to the Trump administration canceling these grants that were authorized by Congress?
I am saying that those are two possibilities, but that the real situation is that we need to have the Republican Congress people fight for our state like they claim that they will.
What about the billion the mayor has asked for? Do you think it'll end up in the state budget? I've heard the governor, for instance, make the argument that there is resources that were allocated as far as migrant money in the last budget that the city hasn't claimed. So in your view, does the city need the billion the mayor's asking for? Does it need a little bit? Does it need none of it? What's going to happen?
I think that the mayor, who's now an independent, should talk to his friends in the Republican Party and get that money from the federal government.
So let's move on to how you view the migrant crisis. It has touched every single neighborhood all around the city. How has it been handled in your section of Brooklyn? Are the migrants getting the services they need? Are the neighborhoods and your constituents being able to handle this in a way that you feel is appropriate? Where are we at in your view with this crisis? Is it indeed winding down, or is it still sort of a persistent concern within within the Fort Greene, Williamsburg area?
Well, first of all, since redistricting, I no longer represent Fort Greene. I just represent Greenpoint and Williamsburg.
I apologize then. Okay. Thank you for correcting me.
But additionally, I'm here to talk about my ISA technology bill, not the migrant crisis.
Got it. So let's talk about that bill. Let's get into it. What are the details? What do folks need to know?
So this is a bill that is for the most reckless drivers. It is a simple device that would be installed in the vehicle of these super speeders cars for 1 year. And the speed limiter physically prevents a vehicle from going more than 5 miles an hour over the speed limit on any given road. So it would only be applied to vehicles that have 6 or more speed or red light tickets in a year, and any driver who receives 11 or more points on their license in a year, which currently requires that a driver loses their license.
And this is in response to that horrible crash. I believe it was 2 or so weeks ago, correct? I mean, that was sort of the exclamation point that moved this forward, right?
Correct. And in fact, we've had this bill for 2 years because every year in New York City, as well as in Brooklyn, we see super speeders, which are only about 1% of the driving population, killing families, killing pedestrians, killing children. There was an incident last year where a baby was killed on the sidewalk by a super speeder. There was an incident 2 years ago where a child was killed. These are regularly occurring tragedies, and these crashes are preventable. So that's really what this ISA technology is all about.
So here's just sort of a layman's question as I'm thinking about this, talking to you about this. Why should someone who has 6 or more major super speeding violations even be allowed to have a license? I know we're talking about a piece of technology on a car that's registered to them. Why should they even be allowed to have a license? Isn't that something the state should regulate as well, perhaps?
Well, we absolutely believe that as well. But what we found with data is that 75% of people with a suspended license drive anyway. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that many of those folks, especially across the state, not in the city, are driving because they cannot connect with their daily life without an automobile. So for example, going to school, going to work, going to doctor's appointments, in many regions of our state, the only way to do that is via a car. So what we see people doing is they have their license suspended and then they drive anyway because they need transportation. So while we are trying to fix the public transit infrastructure across the state, we are also looking to fix this situation for people and teach them, train them how they can drive under the speed limit and learn that they're still getting to their place on time, getting to where they need to be. So that's something that's a really big, important requirement. Yeah.
Assemblymember, I appreciate you joining us to chop up the day's news, your bill, along with the state budget and everything. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you too. Have a great day.
You too. And that'll do it for us on the PIX on Politics Daily show. We'll see you again tomorrow right here at 1 p.m. and on PIX 11 Plus. And make sure you check out PIX on Politics on TV, 6:30 Friday evening, re-airing Sunday at 7:30. Have a great day.